Originally announced in 2019 but released by DC Comics in mid-2021, was the graphic novel aimed at young adults, being that of I Am Not Starfire, in which it is the tale that describes the teenage daughter of the well-known Teen Titans heroine of Starfire. The story was that of Mandy being constantly compared to her mother, as well as trying to establish her own identity as a young woman on coming to the realization of who she is. From a social setting as well as of a professional setting, Mandy has to come into her own realization, as mentioned, of what she wants to do with her own life to be an individual woman separate from the well-known persona of her mother. From initial samples of the artwork promoted online for the novel, as well as aspects of the actual script used for the story, it was met with extraordinarily harsh criticism online from critics as well as DC comic readers. The circumstances for the criticisms harder that the writer of the novel, being that of Mariko Tamaki, literally inserted herself into a story with a well-known DC character, and according to online sources, Mandy is nothing but a Mary Sue. For reference, Starfire as a character has been around since the 1980s within DC Comics, but it wasn't until the early 2000s in the highly respected Teen Titans cartoon that casual audiences as well as people learned of Starfire as a character. Comic readers also mention about the specific detail that Starfire already had a daughter by the name of Mari Grayson from the Kingdom Come miniseries of the mid-1990s. So the concept of a daughter of Starfire as promoted by DC Comics for the story was an attempt to gain the attention of casual readers, and perhaps to overlook the established continuity that a new character might have in terms of attention or short-term sales of a particular graphic novel. At first, criticisms of the novel were minor, but as time passed and more people heard of the circumstances and situations with the character depicted in the novel, as well as the specific details of Mandy there were claims, as mentioned, of self-insertion into the novel by the author as a clear attempt to live out perhaps some sort of fantasy. Even further, that there were clear visuals of the character in relation to the writer's own physical appearance. And due to these details, the story itself was completely overlooked due to the circumstances of the character and the author. Due to the complaints of the readership base as well as critics, DC Comics slowly distanced itself from the novel, although continued to quietly earn slight sales, but popular consensus were that as a graphic novel, the question of it being in continuity was neutral, as most fans didn't actually consider it to be in valid continuity due to it being depicted as it was, rather just a standalone story featuring a new character with established ones that might not necessarily be used nor depicted in future DC Comics stories. A character can be overrated yet hated because many assume the character to be a literal interpretation or depiction of an author within a work of fiction.